LR, the Liberal Redneck here, coming to you from a country where our founding fathers made some very good decisions and a few very bad ones. We are still suffering today because of one of those very bad ones, the Electoral College used to elect our presidents. We are the only democracy in the world that uses such an archaic method. In every other democracy, the candidate with the most votes is declared the winner. In our country, the Electoral College can sometimes declare a candidate the winner when they did not receive the most votes. A classic example is former President Felon. The $64,000 question is, why was such a law created? It was created out of a compromise, when the world was a very different place than it is today. At the time of the Philadelphia Convention, no other country in the world directly elected its chief executive, so the delegates were wading into uncharted territory. Further complicating the task was a deep-rooted distrust of executive power. After all, the fledgling nation had just fought its way out from under a tyrannical king and overreaching colonial governors. They didn't want another despot on their hands. One group of delegates felt strongly that Congress shouldn't have anything to do with picking the president. Too much opportunity for chummy corruption between the executive and legislative branches. Another camp was dead set against letting the people elect the president by a straight popular vote. First, they thought 18th century voters lacked the resources to be fully informed about the candidates, especially in rural outposts. Second, they feared a headstrong Democratic mob steering the country astray. And third, a populist president appealing directly to the people could command dangerous amounts of power. Out of those drawn-out debates came a compromise based on the idea of electoral intermediaries. These intermediaries wouldn't be picked by Congress or elected by the people. Instead, the states would each appoint independent electors who would cast the actual ballots for the presidency. But determining how many electors to assign each state was another sticking point. Here, the divide was between slave-owning and non-slave-owning states. It was the same issue that plagued the distribution of seats in the House of Representatives. Should or shouldn't the founders include slaves in counting a state's population? In 1787, roughly 40% of people living in the southern states were enslaved black people who couldn't vote. James Madison from Virginia, where enslaved people accounted for 60% of the population, knew that either a direct presidential election or one with electors divvied up according to free white residents only wouldn't fly in the South. The right of suffrage was much more extensive in the northern than the southern states, said Madison, and the latter could have no influence in the election on the score of Negroes. The result was the controversial 3/5 compromise, in which 3/5 of the enslaved black population would be counted toward allocating representatives and electors and calculating federal taxes. The compromise ensured that southern states would ratify the Constitution and gave Virginia, home to more than 200,000 slaves, a quarter, 12, of the total electoral votes required to win the presidency, 46. A concession to slave owners is no longer needed, as we no longer have slaves. Time to end this ridiculous concession and follow the rest of the world. One person, one vote, winner take all is the only thing that makes any sense. Thanks for listening, and remember, always vote blue.